Speaks, you will see him. Sorry,
I'm here.
Secretary.
Good morning. It's great to be with you. Pleasure to join you.
All right. Well, thank you, Mr. Secretary, for joining us at the 6th annual 23rd Congressional District of New York Manufacturing Summit. And Mr. Secretary, who we have here today are some folks from our district across the state of New York and across the country to highlight the issues facing U.S. manufacturing. And you've been a great friend of U.S. manufacturing. You've been a great friend of our office, and I've so enjoyed working with you over the past few years. And I just wanted to first start by just taking a moment to recognize the news of the day and extend to you and to the entire Trump administration, to the president and to Melania, our thoughts and prayers, given the diagnosis being COVID-19 positive, that I know he's going to and she's going to get through this virus in a strong and sound fashion. But I just wanted to give you an opportunity to offer your comments in regards to the president's news today.
Thank you. And I just also want to say that I am wishing both of them a speedy recovery. I was glad to hear this morning that they have that he has very light symptoms. And again, I'm wishing them both a very speedy recovery. And I'll be speaking to the president later today to update him on our COVID negotiations.
Well, I really appreciate that. So maybe if we can jump right into the conversation of the day on manufacturing. And you know, in the Problem Solvers Caucus, we've been working over the last 8 weeks, and I appreciate the relationship we've had with the White House and trying to get the negotiators back in the room. And I know you've done yeoman's work being in the room with the speaker, talking to Nancy Pelosi late into the evening last night, and even today is the news I've been hearing. So can you give your comments on why it's so important for us to get a COVID-19 stimulus package done, and what you see as the need out there for this from a manufacturing and just a general perspective?
Well, let me first thank you for the work that you've been doing. I know you've been speaking with Mark Meadows and others on a regular basis, so I appreciate that very much. We had another good unemployment number this morning. The fact that we now have unemployment below 8% is obviously a very good thing. I never thought a year ago I'd say I'm really proud of the fact that we have unemployment down below 8%, but I really am. That's a result of all the work the administration has done working with Congress and the legislation that we've passed before. So there's no question that had we not passed the legislation, we'd be in a very different situation today economically. I think the good news is there's many areas of the economy as it reopens that are recovering extremely well. On the other hand, there are still parts of the economy that are having a real difficulty, no fault of their own, but because of the COVID shutdown. Obviously, anything that's travel related, hospitality related, restaurants continue to have a difficult time. And as we look to do more legislation, really the focus is on kids and jobs and those areas that are hurt, and a much more targeted approach than last time.
I appreciate that, Mr. Secretary. And I think one of the things that we were so proud of in Congress to get out there was the Paycheck Protection Program, and how much that went to small business in particular. And I was wondering if you could offer any comments on how you saw the Paycheck Protection Program being such a positive impact in regards to the COVID-19 height of the pandemic, and maybe going forward. Are there things that you're looking at that maybe we need to focus on in Congress to try to get this in a better position under the program?
Well, there's no question that it had an enormous impact on saving jobs and keeping particularly small businesses open. I think it was really life savings to many of them. I would just say we have an enormous amount of bipartisan support for that program, so we're very proud of how the Democrats and the Republicans work together. As part of additional legislation, I think we have enormous bipartisan support for more help to small businesses. Clearly, this time it would be more targeted. So in the case of the PPP, we would add a test of revenue decline to it to make sure that people who get second payments are the businesses that really need it that are still hurt.
That's great feedback. And I know there's a lot of businesses out here in our district that are in that exact position that benefited greatly from the Paycheck Protection Program, but just needed some additional assistance to get through. And then as they go also through the program and the loan forgiveness, I was wondering if maybe you could offer some commentary, the question of the loan forgiveness being a taxable event and taxable income, and how you see the loan forgiveness process going forward through the Treasury Department, and any advice you could offer folks that are going through that as we speak, that they can maybe get through it in a quicker, more efficient fashion.
So let me first comment on the tax issue, because I think there's a general misunderstanding, so that I want to just make sure that people understand this. There's no tax impact one way or another to the PPP program. So small businesses are neutral and indifferent. The way this works is that in the legislation, it was very clear that the money you get when the loan is forgiven is not a taxable event. So if you took $500,000 from the government and you use that to pay your employees, you don't get taxed on the $500,000, and you don't get to deduct the $500,000 for your employees because you didn't get taxed on the income. So you're completely indifferent one way or another. You're tax neutral. As it relates to the forgiveness part of this, I appreciate for many small businesses, the forgiveness program is a little bit complicated. As part of additional legislation, we do support the bipartisan fix to simplify the process for loans that are $150,000 and less, but still gives the SBA the ability to audit as necessary. Unfortunately, without legislation, there's only so much we can do. We're trying to work on a solution for loans that are $50,000 and less administratively that at least makes it slightly easier, and hopefully we'll roll that out within the next week. But I would encourage businesses that the portal is open, so I would encourage businesses to go ahead and apply for forgiveness so they can be processed.
I think that's great advice, Mr. Secretary. And as we talk about the Paycheck Protection Program, we hear a lot of it in the office and across the country. But there's maybe not as much attention to other programs that you see out there from the Treasury Department's point of view, or that you could highlight to these manufacturers and to other small businesses and larger businesses that may be tuning in today. Is there any other programs or assistance through the COVID-19 program or COVID-19 situation that you see as something that maybe people aren't taking advantage of, or is a resource or an opportunity out there that maybe you could highlight today so our folks gain some valuable input from this exchange?
Well, I think the good news, again, in the bipartisan legislation, and again, I think we're super proud of the fact that it passed 96-0 and 100-0 in the Senate. There really were all different parts of help for the economy. So there was money for hospitals, there was money for testing, there was money for development of vaccines. Clearly, the fact that we've been able to put into manufacturing a large number of vaccines so that as they come through the testing process and get certified, we'll be able to distribute them quickly to the American public. There was money for state and local governments to cover them for COVID-related issues. So firefighters, policemen, first responders could continue to get paid. So it was really very broad. And again, right now, the focus is really more targeted, particularly focused on schools. We'd like to pass additional money so that schools can have money, whether it's online or whether it's in person, that kids can be safe. Money from everything for child care to additional health issues, again, to additional money for the airlines, which are most impacted to small businesses.
I appreciate that. And then I also wanted to touch upon maybe some other areas that you've been involved with. I think that has been very helpful, especially the work you've done through Treasury Department, the Federal Reserve under the Main Street program, some of the opportunities there. Is there any additional resources that you see or changes from its inception that you see that could be utilized under that Main Street program, because of the liquidity issues are so important to so many of our businesses, especially our larger businesses across the country, that maybe you could offer some insight today as to maybe folks don't even know what that program is that are on this call?
Well, the good news is, the Federal Reserve team and the Treasury team worked very, very closely together. We authorized 13 different emergency facilities. The great news about that is many of these facilities, the mere announcement of the facilities, and the first two we announced actually before the legislation was even passed, served to unlock the markets and allowed literally trillions of dollars to be raised in the markets as opposed to having to put it on the government balance sheet. So whether it was the municipal market, whether it was the corporate bond market, the fact that you had a company like Boeing, who we thought we'd have to lend directly to, borrow over $25 billion, the airline industry borrowed over $75 billion, and lots of small businesses had access to their own bank financing once we unlock the market. The Main Street program is up and running. Unfortunately, it doesn't fit everybody. I think the issue is there are businesses that don't have revenues and really need grants and not loans. But again, I would encourage, I've spoken to a bunch of manufacturers that have taken advantage of it, and I would encourage you to make sure your bank is aware of it and discusses it with you.
I appreciate that. And maybe in another area, because it is all about cash flow. What I've talked to a lot of businesses and heard from a lot of constituent businesses and individuals, COVID-19 has impacted revenue so drastically for these folks and their cash flow and their balance sheets. And so as you've dealt with the authority that the administration has and the Treasury has in regards to adjusting deadlines and filing dates and things like that, any thoughts in regards to the utilization of that authority if necessary in regards to extending deadlines, extending dates, and how do how should folks look at that authority going forward?
Well, at this point, we don't plan on doing any more extensions this year. I think the extensions were very helpful to the taxpayers, particularly when in the beginning people were worried about whether they could get to their accountants, could get to their tax professionals, small businesses that were locked down. And I think that worked very well. We'll consider, I hope next year, by the time we get around to tax time, we have a vaccine and this is long behind us and we don't have to worry about these issues.
Well, I agree with you on that 100%. And I know, Mr. Secretary, we have a hard stop with you here in a couple of minutes. And as we wrap up here with our exchange, and obviously, we have news of the day and your negotiations on the stimulus continue with the Speaker. I was just wondering if you have any closing remarks to our folks and to the country in regards to those tuning in today that you would like to share with us.
I would just, say, again, we appreciate the work with Congress and the way they've worked with us. The president is determined to make sure everybody who lost their job as a result of COVID gets back to work. So our work is not done until we get the economy back to where it was. And we have a lot of confidence that will be the case. I think we'll have a very strong quarter as we reopen. But again, we're conscious to the fact of there are parts of the economy that need more help, and we'll continue to try to work to get that done, and we appreciate your support.
Well, Mr. Secretary, you have it. I've enjoyed our work together, especially through the Problem Solvers Caucus, and you've been up to the caucus numerous times, and David,
yes,
we've appreciated the way that you work, the way that your mind operates, and just know you have our tireless support as we go forward on the Hill here to make sure, as you're standing for Americans and especially American workers, I just want you to know it's appreciated. And on behalf of all the manufacturers of America, I really want you to know those are somebody that are near and dear to my heart. And getting them back to work and making it here to sell around the world is a mantra we believe in. So keep up the great work.
We do as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Secretary. All right. Well, Allison, I think we have an exciting panel coming up.